The 2021 Wisconsin Science Festival. Hybrid, hands-on, and virtual. Events throughout Wisconsin for all ages. Discover the wonders of science and the power of knowledge with a focus on fungi with scientists, live Q&A sessions, science experiments, and more. Plus, PBS Wisconsin Education launches 2 new interactive labs in the Meet the Lab collection. Full schedule at wisconsinsciencefest.org. Curiosity unleashed.
Greetings, fellow scientists. I'd like to welcome you all to the Wisconsin Science Festival online field trip, Nature Explorers. Thank you for joining us today. We're ready to get started. My name is Dan from the Wisconsin Science Festival team, and we're here with our special guests, Melissa and Kara from the Aldo Leopold Nature Center, and Lyric Bartholomew from the UW-Madison, going to the land and the lab. So how can you participate today? Well, you'll notice that your picture and audio are muted, but if you have any questions you'd like to ask, you can use the Q&A function. As soon as you have a question pop in your head, you can type it or have your teacher type it in the Q&A, and I will go ahead and ask that question out loud for you to our scientists. This field trip will be recorded. And as always, we ask you that you do this and all the activities at the Wisconsin Science Festival with a responsible adult. We'd also like to thank our sponsors and partners that help make the Wisconsin Science Festival possible. You can find more activities and events during the festival at wisconsinsciencefest.org, including participating in the Wisconsin Science Festival Bioblitz. With that, we're excited to get started, so let's take it away.
Hi, my name is Melissa, and I'm here at the Aldo Leopold Nature Center in Monona, and we are located near Madison. And this is a really cool place because we are hidden kind of in the pocket of big city, which makes this place really special. And we're going to spend some time today looking in the pond and seeing what we have. You can kind of see the Nature Center in the background. We're named after Aldo Leopold, who was a really important naturalist here in Wisconsin. And one of his big goals was to teach people about nature and the importance of nature and how we're connected. And that's what we continue to do here today. So I'm just going to show you how this works here. I am an environmental educator here, and I've been here for 5 years now. And as a kid, I always loved being outside. It was where I'd wake up, we'd be out exploring, swimming in the ponds, and then just constantly looking around to see what I could find. And then I ended up going to stay. And now I feel like I have one of the coolest jobs ever because I get to spend all day outdoors exploring. And I also get to, this is one of the things that we do. All right, and one of the tools, so we're going to do a pond dip, and the most important tool that we need to do that is our net. And I'm just going to show you really quick how we do this. I'm going to teach you the secret way to get this done. So it's pretty much, we're going to go along to the shore and use the net, and we are going to dip along the grass. A lot of times people want to go out into the open, but all of the things that we're after are going to be hiding in the grass. So all you do is you're just going to kind of sweep in there, and this is the best part because you just never know what you're going to get. And then we're going to go and look and see what's in here. And a lot of times things are small, it's camouflaged, you don't see it very well, but here's some. So this is a dragonfly. We're going to talk a little bit more about that one in a little bit. But luckily, I did some dipping before everyone got here, and I wanted to go over a couple of the things that we found today. So if you follow me to the table, I wanted to start by showing you this bucket over here. And if you look, you'll notice that a lot of this stuff, it's not bright colors. Like you don't see purple, you don't see orange. A lot of things end up being like a brown or greenish color. And that is to help these animals with survival and camouflage. Because if they were really bright colors, they would end up sticking out pretty easily and predators would be able to find them and eat them. So you can see that these animals are the color that they are to help them blend in with their surroundings. And then we're also going to talk about some other cool adaptations that these animals have, especially with things that can adapt to living part of their life in the water, and then they live part of their life out of the water. So adaptations are either behaviors or physical things that the animal can do in order to survive. So one of the ones that I wanted to show you is this one. So we have a couple of beetles here, and these different kind of beetles all have really cool tricks for surviving. So things that animals need to survive is they have to be able to get food, they have to be able to get oxygen, and they need to have space to live, right? So for some of these with getting oxygen, they have cool tricks where they will actually use gills. Some of them can catch little bubbles of air and take them down with them. And then others have these really cool breathing tubes that they can use. So their bodies are submerged, but then they have their tubes are exposed to get the oxygen that they need. All right. So this one, we do have a diving beetle. There's another one here I wanted to show you, which is one of my favorites because this one, this back swimmer here has a pretty cool trick where its coloring helps protect it as well. So I'm going to try to grab one so you can see this. But if you notice the top, so his body, the part that we can see here is a dark brown. And that's one side, but then if I can get one here, let me see if I grab. I have to be careful because these ones can actually bite. They're predators. But if you look at the other side of his body, it's a really light color. And this is a cool trick that some other animals that live in the water have, like sharks, where it helps them to camouflage with their surroundings. So if I was an animal swimming over this bug, I would see it's dark and the bottom of the water is dark, so it would kind of camouflage. However, if I was swimming under it and looking up towards the sky is really light. And if the underside of this animal is really light as well, it's going to be able to blend in and camouflage that way as well. You can actually see one of them, he's swimming where we can see the light side there. And you can notice there is a huge difference. Another animal that we have here in the pond, that this is one that will spend part of its life in the water and part of its life out of the water. I think a lot of you will recognize this one. These are tadpoles. And we actually have a couple different types in the pond. And these ones here, this one, bigger one here, is a bullfrog. It's called an American bullfrog. You can see this here, and its coloration helps it camouflage really well. And then this one, the way it gets the oxygen that it needs is it uses gills, and it can also absorb oxygen through its skin. It's hard to tell, but it's pretty soft. And then they have these really cool mouth parts because they eat plants, and they can just kind of scrape plants like algae and stuff off of the plants in the pond. All right, and the bullfrogs can actually stay in the pond for a couple of years. They don't go from tadpole to adult immediately in one season. They can stay for 2 to 3 years, and then eventually we have this one, and hopefully he'll stay in the bucket as you're looking, and that is an adult American bullfrog. And these guys are pretty cool. Let's see, maybe I can grab him. This isn't the biggest one I've seen. They can actually get to be pretty big. Luckily, the weather is not great today, so it seems like when it's a little bit cooler, they're a little bit easier to handle. It's slippery though. So this is an adult bullfrog, and some cool adaptations that this one has. So this one's going to hunt, so it's going to eat like bugs, insects, other invertebrates. But if you look at the coloration, it's going to help it camouflage. Look at those really crazy feet. The legs are super muscular, and you can see the webbing to help it swim. And then also it's got this light coloration on the bottom. And then these dots here, it's, I don't know if people knew this, but those are actually its ears. They're called tympanic membranes. And then frogs have something cool. I don't know if any of you like to go swimming in the water. I do, but I can't open my eyes under the water. I have to wear goggles. And frogs have this really amazing adaptation where they have this clear membrane. You can kind of see it there. It closes is over their eyelid. No, there we can see it now. And it's like a built-in pair of goggles that automatically goes on when it goes under the water. So it's pretty awesome. Frogs are amazing, right? And this is just one of like 5 species that we have here at the Nature Center in the pond. And like I said, this isn't even full size. I've seen them get a lot bigger, but I'm gonna put him back. Back on. I wanted to show you a couple other ones that we have here that, again, some of these, especially insects, they will spend part of their life in the water and then they spend part of their life out of the water as adults. And sometimes this can happen in a short period of time and sometimes it can take several years. One of them here that I like is, this is called a damselfly nymph. And if you see it here, there's a diagram. And you can see it looks, it's an insect, it has the 6 legs, and this is called a nymph, so it's kind of like a baby. And one of the cool things that this one has in order to survive while it's in the water is it has these, looks like little feathers on its tail. And I think you can kind of see that on the one in the dish here. And those are its gills. So it has gills on the outside of its body, and that's how it's getting the oxygen that it needs. And it does eat other little teeny tiny insects and invertebrates for food. And this one you've probably seen flying around. I grabbed a big picture of it so that you could see what it looked like as an adult. And it looks like a smaller version of a dragonfly. And sometimes people will see that and they'll think, oh, it's just a baby dragonfly because it's a smaller one. And it's actually its own thing. And one way you can tell that a damselfly apart from a dragonfly is they usually are thinner. So if you look at their bodies, they're a little more thin along here. But then as it's perched, if you notice, its wings are folded up. So as I see these, when they land, they'll fold their wings and then they'll just kind of hang out there. But they do fly really fast. They're really good at hunting and they'll grab insects, different things out of the air mid-flight. So it's really cool to see. And we have a bunch of different kinds too. All right. And then I wanted to show you another one here at the Nature Center, which I think is one of my favorites. It has, it's this one right here. And again, this is a nymph. So with insects in their life cycles, they'll go through different stages. And this one here, both of these together, they both go through a life cycle where they start as an egg, and then a nymph comes out, and the nymph will develop for a while, and then we get the adult. So it's kind of similar to other insects. Like a lot of you are probably familiar with like a butterfly metamorphosis where you go egg, larva, nymph, or egg, larva, pupa, and adult. But here, this one's a little bit different because there's no pupa stage. All right, and this one here, this is a dragonfly, baby, right, baby, or a nymph. And I wanted to show you this because there are actually a bunch of different types. So one of my questions I have for you is, how many dragonfly species do you think we have in Wisconsin? And I have to tell you, I was kind of surprised when I found out this answer. And I learned this not too long ago, because when I would see these flying around, I just kind of noticed, oh, it's a dragonfly. But then I've noticed too, if I start looking closer, there's so many cool different patterns and colors, and they're amazing creatures. Like, they are super exciting to watch, and I learn new stuff about them all the time. So we had a poll. I'm kind of curious to see what people thought. I'll give you the answer in just a second here, and we'll see if you guys are right. We had a couple of choices. All right, we'll see. I'm going to give you the answer, and we'll see how it goes. What were most people saying?
Most people said 5,000.
Oh, 5,000. Wow. Okay. So not that many. It's 164 different species of dragonfly in Wisconsin, right? Some other cool things that I learned about dragonflies too is that they actually will migrate in winter. So a lot of insects that we have here in Wisconsin, like grasshoppers, for example, they don't make it through the winter, but they'll lay eggs so that there are new grasshoppers in the spring. We have a couple of insects here that actually do migrate, and a lot of people know about monarchs, but another one that is not as known is a dragonfly. right? So if you look in the dish, you can see, if you look carefully, there's a couple different kinds in there. And sometimes people see them right away and they're like especially like these little dark ones, they're like, oh, it's a spider. But if I look carefully, I'll notice that there are only 6 legs and spiders have 8. And then if you look even a little bit closer, you'll start to see how they are different than spiders. Different ones here. So they're pretty cool when they're hunting. They do hunt other things, and they have this new, and it's kind of like a lever, and they'll grab it and then pull the food in. And dragonflies, so when the eggs hatch, they can take anywhere from 3 to 5 years as a nymph before they will emerge out of the water as an adult, which I think is crazy because sometimes people just they spend most of their time in the water, and then as they get bigger, insects actually have their skeleton on the outside of the shed. So it'd be like if you bought a suit of armor to wear when you were 5, right? And as you grow bigger, your suit of armor doesn't grow bigger along with it. So you're going to need to get a new suit of armor. So these dragonflies will have that new exoskeleton underneath. So as they shed, there's a new one during those few years. And then on the last shed, I have a picture of this because this is really fun. Sometimes we'll find these. So we'll see these crawl up onto a blade of grass or onto the side of the dock. So they'll crawl out of the water. And then when they're ready for their last shed, this is what happens. And you can see the nymph exoskeleton there. The adult will emerge, and then as it opens up its wings and things start to dry out, it'll eventually fly away, right? And I have a picture of an adult. It's kind of wet right now. So we got rain today. But if you notice, dragonflies, when they're perched, that'll have them folded together. And dragonflies have, so I'm gonna have another poll question for you. How fast do you think dragonflies can fly? And one cool thing here is that they have 4 separate wings and they can control each of those wings individually. So they are pros. All right, so let's see what people think. We have a couple of choices. All right, and I'll give you a second to think of that. I just wanted to point out a couple other ones that we have. Most of the stuff we have here are invertebrates, which means they don't have a backbone. We do have a couple of minnows in our pond. Our pond is kind of small, so we don't get the big things like trout or perch or bass. We'll get, we do get some minnows. They're called fathead minnows, and we do get bullheads that we catch every once in a while. See how people are doing.
Like 67% chose 35 miles per hour.
67% of you are correct. Good job. It is 35 miles an hour. And that number might not sound too high, but I want you to think about the next time you're in the car and you know you're moving 35 miles an hour. It's pretty awesome to know that. And they're hunting. They are on the hunt for food and about what dragonflies eat. I don't know if I hear lyric in my ear yet. I don't know if lyric's there.
I was having some technical difficulties. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can.
Yes.
We gotta love technology, right?
Yes, yes. Melissa, what did you ask?
So we were showing the group some of the things that we caught, and we were wondering what dragonflies eat. I was thinking maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
So one time, Melissa, I read, and I don't know if this is still true, but I read that dragonfly nymphs that you showed us have the fastest jaws in nature.
I think I've heard that before too. That's cool.
Totally amazing, right? We would think something like a lion But in fact, dragonfly jaws, when they're just little nymphs, baby dragonflies underwater, they can reach out and grab anything that's sort of swimming by them. And one of the things we know that dragonflies eat in the water, baby dragonflies eat baby mosquitoes.
Oh, so did you want to tell us more about your work then?
I do, yeah. So I have a few slides to show you guys, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about baby mosquitoes, and I'm going to show them to you because in my lab here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, we study mosquitoes, and I hope that after seeing my lab and seeing some baby mosquitoes, you too will get really curious about this thing. All right, so Dan, would you let me know if you can see what I'm showing here?
Yes, I can see.
Great.
Mosquito science.
Awesome. So, so students and teachers and friends and colleagues, I am a mosquito scientist. So I might just look like a regular old lady. I'm a mom, and I'm a daughter and a granddaughter, all the same things as you are. And I'm also a scientist, and I'm a scientist who's really super lucky because I get to work at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I'm a badger, and I've put two animals here on the screen for you. So you've gotten to see this morning a whole bunch of really interesting animals. You've seen frogs and dragonflies and back swimmers and great things. Well, it turns out all those things are animals. Badgers are animals, and mosquitoes are animals too. And these are the things I study as mosquitoes. So I'm a professor here at UW-Madison, and that means that I'm a teacher, like the teachers in your classrooms, and I'm also a scientist. So I get to do mosquito science in the lab. And just like Melissa, I think I have the best job ever. I started out as a kid who really liked to be outside, just like Melissa. So you can see me on the left here next to my strawberry shortcake canopy bed. I was a kid who was rarely inside. So I don't know how my mom and dad got this picture of me, but I was always outdoors playing and looking at little things. So somehow little things, you know, in the water or on the sidewalk just fascinated me. And with time, what I did was I just took that energy and I put it into learning at school to know more and more and more about what I was looking at. That was my goal. That was what was interesting to me. And so that's what I did. And so I still get to be a kid and channel that energy of curiosity now as a scientist here at UW-Madison. And so the picture on the left is this cool picture I found on Etsy of somehow I found a picture, who knows how this happens, of a woman riding a mosquito, right? And she's got even like a little flag with ticks on it. Totally looks like me, but I swear I didn't solicit or commission this piece of art. So I get to continue to play at what I do, and I do it at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the vet school. So if you guys have ever been to campus for with a sick pet, with maybe a sick horse or a sick dog or a healthy dog that just needed its shots, you might have visited the University of Wisconsin-Madison Vet School. And that's where I am. That's where I work. And I do this work on mosquitoes. So I get to keep playing and learning and unleashing my curiosity in my lab here at UW-Madison. And what I want to do is take the time that we have left today to actually give you a tour of my lab. And I want to just talk a little bit about the kinds of things that you can learn by having a lab and just by keeping that curiosity alive in your spirit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from my office. So here you can see my office. I have a really cool picture of a mosquito head on my wall. And I'm going to walk you down the hall, hopefully with my telephone, and we're going to just take a little tour of the lab. And some of the things we're going to talk about and do are we're going to think about what baby mosquitoes look like. So from Melissa and her pans of insects out there at the Aldo Leopold Center, we're going to see something really similar actually in the lab. We're going to talk about how I feed them and what they eat. So we thought about what eats them, but what do they eat? So if a baby mosquito gets eaten by a baby dragonfly, the baby mosquito must have eaten something too. So what is it that they eat? And we'll talk about adult mosquitoes and what they look like, and then what adult mosquitoes eat. So I'm going to just kind of point out to you, if you don't already know, that baby mosquitoes live under the water and they hatch out of eggs. So you heard about insect life cycles from Melissa too. So baby mosquitoes hatch from eggs into the water, and they're these funny little larvae that breathe through, actually they breathe through their butts. They get oxygen by putting their tail ends up against the water surface to get oxygen. So we'll look at some of those in the lab. And then we'll also do some work where we look at what adult mosquitoes eat. And so this is work that I really like to do with kids. I have a summer camp called Mosquitoes and Me, where we go into schools and we learn about mosquito science. So you can see pictures actually of me in a comic book that we've made because of this work. We worked with some of the same people who drew Spider-Man, and they drew me and kids working in the lab. So today you get to be those kids that are depicted here. So I'm going to pop off of my headset and put my mask on so I'm safe and walk down to my lab with you. So sit tight while I do that. And then Dan, while we're waiting, maybe you could ask our students and our young scientists how many kinds of mosquitoes they think are in Wisconsin.
Wow, that's a fascinating question. Yeah, so how many kinds of mosquitoes do you think are in Wisconsin? And from the Q&A, you can just post any questions that you might have, or even comments to answers to those questions. And people I see in the Q&A are curious about where we can find different animals, including mosquitoes.
Great. So can you guys see me? Am I showing up on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm still seeing my slides, so it's okay though, as long as you can see. Do you see me or my lab? Oh, you see my lab.
Yes, we see your lab.
Okay, friends, I'm just gonna step back a little bit so I can show you that on the door of my lab. Can you see what it says?
Mosquito research.
Great, so we're going in. And look, I have these plastic strips here so that if there are any mosquitoes flying around, hopefully they won't get through these strips. And we can walk in and see. This is the space where I have my lab at the vet school at the University of Wisconsin. And I have this big chamber. It looks almost like a big refrigerator you might see at a restaurant. And inside, this is pretty wild. I have cages, cages of mosquitoes. These are my adult mosquitoes in these cages. And then I have all my baby mosquitoes in the same kinds of pans Melissa was showing you that are at the Aldo Leopold Center. So in my lab, we have all kinds of different mosquitoes that we raise. I'm gonna just show you quickly. Some of those mosquitoes are here. These are big, huge mosquitoes called toxorhynchites. So we have these cages and cages of mosquitoes so we can do mosquito science and try to ask questions about what is it that makes a mosquito tick. All right, so I'm just gonna come out to the bench here and show you guys, this is a tray, just like you saw at the Aldo Leopold Center. It's a white tray so we can see the insects inside. And instead of pulling these insects out of a stream or a lake, I grew them in my lab. So, friends, here are baby mosquitoes. And if you wouldn't mind, I would love to hear what you think these things look like. In the Q&A, if you want to put in some ideas about what you're seeing here. Okay, I understand it's a little bit hard to see, but sometimes they come into focus. There we go.
Jennifer says they kind of look like worms or similar to tadpoles.
Right. And so, you know, all these things that are in the water have the same kinds of struggles and challenges. They've got to find oxygen and be able to swim around. So they might actually look pretty similar because they got to do the same kinds of things. So they're swimming around. And can you guys see that on the bottom of the pan here, there's some kind of reddish pinkish stuff? That is the food that we feed our baby mosquitoes in the lab. So in a pond, the mosquitoes would be eating things like bacteria and algae, maybe just some, you know, dead leaves in the water. But in the lab, we have to find something that kind of looks like that and tastes like that to keep our baby mosquitoes happy. And so if you have fish at home, you might recognize this is the food that we feed mosquitoes when they're babies. We feed them tetramin. This is a giant container. If you have goldfish or something like that at home, you probably have a little tiny container full of tetramin. We get it in the jumbo size because we keep so many mosquitoes in our lab. So these are baby mosquitoes. So they grow and grow and grow under the water. And then the mosquitoes that you know, and that really bother you probably. Is anybody bothered by mosquitoes in their backyards? You raise your hands virtually if mosquitoes find you delicious. So, ooh, I put light on it. So these mosquitoes, when they're adults, you know, they have wings and they fly around. And so that's what we're looking at here is a whole bunch of mosquitoes inside a cage. And normally what we would do is we would feed these mosquitoes and collect their eggs. And you can see probably, if I just chat with you guys for a minute, if I put my hand here and we watch these mosquitoes, you can see that they start to figure out that I'm here and they start flying over to my hand. And they start probing around. So more and more mosquitoes are coming over to me. This is like the mosquito version of DoorDash. They've just realized that something delicious has shown up on their doorstep. And they're coming to me and starting to probe. And I can actually feel them kind of poking at me. So we can do this in the lab so that we can do all kinds of mosquito science.
Lyric, Bennett and Charlotte are wondering, can they get you? Are they biting you now?
They are biting me now. There's some of them that are filling up with blood. And because I kept them in the lab, I know that they're all clean and healthy and they won't make me sick. But they might make my palm a little bit itchy if I let them feed for too long. But yeah, they're just poking at me. So these mosquitoes in my lab, then if I let them take blood, then they would lay eggs and those eggs would hatch and there would be baby mosquitoes again swimming around. So before they take too much blood, I'm going to take my hand away. So I was just teasing them. They don't get to take too much. And they're irritated with me. Some of them are still actually looking to see if they can find me. So a whole bunch here that are still probing around, wondering where their lunch went. So by keeping the adults in these cages And then the baby mosquitoes in these pans, we can keep this life cycle going and keep learning about the mosquitoes and doing research. So I'm going to turn out the light and turn this back over to me, and then see if you guys have some questions that I can answer for you.
Wonderful. Yes. Well, there is a question about, yeah, so what we just saw Lyric do mosquitoes like some people better than others? Maybe the Aldo Leopold Nature Center crew has field experience, and Lyric, do you know, what are they looking for when they're biting us?
Yeah, I do know, but I wonder if Melissa and Kara, if they experience one person being more bothered by mosquitoes than another.
Yeah, I am definitely that person. Like, I feel like if I'm in the crowd, they'll skip over everybody else and they'll come find me. So maybe you can tell me why or what I can do to prevent that.
Sure.
I was gonna, I can just chime in really quick too. If I get bits, especially on my face, it swells up really big, and like other family members don't quite have that same reaction to a mosquito bite that I do.
Yeah, so that's like two distinct things that are happening, right? Like one person's really delicious to mosquitoes, another person is really allergic to mosquitoes. So when a mosquito bites you, they leave behind their spit, and their spit causes an allergic reaction, and that's why you get those big itchy lumps on your body after a mosquito's fed. I have fed so many mosquitoes during my lifetime playing outside and playing in my lab that I don't actually have much of a reaction. So it doesn't bother me that I just put my hand on this cage and a few mosquitoes got to feed on my hand. I won't even get a mosquito bite, but other people get a really terrible bite. So right there is a whole bunch of kinds of experiments we could imagine doing to try and understand what is it that makes one person more attractive or more itchy after they've been fed on. But to the question that is like, what makes somebody more attractive? We know a couple of things are really important for when a mosquito comes to feed on you. And that is first, your body heat. So maybe you run a little hot, or maybe your temperature is pretty warm, or maybe you're like out at the Leopold Center, you're just really running around a lot and you get warm just because of activity. We know they also like the smell of sweat. They like something called lactic acid, which comes off of our bodies when we're exercising. And they like carbon dioxide. So in your science classes, if you've been learning about breathing, you know that when we breathe out carbon dioxide, and mosquitoes know carbon dioxide and they fly to it. So if you have all of those things, like a nice warm body, maybe a little sweaty from being outside, and you are breathing heavy, you can imagine the mosquitoes are like, oh, hi, there's my lunch, and they come right to you.
Fascinating. There's another question about, do we ever learn about diseases coming from mosquitoes? And, why is it important that we know what kinds of animals are growing around our ponds in Wisconsin?
So I'll take the first one quick, Melissa, and then you can answer the question about why it's important what we know. So we know that there are some diseases that mosquitoes can transmit, and that's exactly why I do the work that I do. I want to understand why some types of mosquitoes transmit diseases. I want to understand why, just like you guys asked, why some people are more attractive to mosquitoes, so that we can find ways to get in the middle of that and prevent it from happening. So that's exactly why I have all those cages of mosquitoes in my lab, and why I'm here at the UW-Madison doing the research that I do. And then I'll turn it over to Melissa to answer the question about why is it important that we know what's in our ponds?
All right, yeah, that's a really good question. So occasionally we do check And it's important to know so that we can see how healthy our pond is, because there are some things that could live in a muddy puddle and it doesn't bother them. But then there are some things which we call indicator species that they're very particular to what kind of environment that they live in. So we have some that will only handle water that has so much dissolved oxygen in it, and the pH has to be a certain level, or just the health of the pond has to be at a certain point. And some of those would be like stoneflies or caddisflies. We didn't catch any of those today, and I think that's mostly because of the time of the year. But then some things like dragonflies are pretty tolerant, and some things like leeches, which we didn't get any today, are pretty tolerant as well. But it is important to know so that we can tell, based on what we're catching, how healthy our pond is.
And maybe I would just say too, like from my perspective, if the ponds aren't healthy and we don't have things like dragonflies and tadpoles and other things that like to eat baby mosquitoes, then we could be making a perfect habitat for the mosquito numbers to really explode. And then there'd be even more mosquitoes feeding on Melissa. So we want to make sure that our ponds are healthy and that there's lots of predators available to control the numbers of mosquitoes that are out there.
Fascinating. And so there's questions in the chat about how we take care, Lyric, how do you take care of your mosquitoes in the lab and feed them? And then Melissa, how do we take care of our environment where we're at? And can we learn from what animals need in the lab, and can that help us take care of the land?
Yeah, I love it. So mosquitoes, you know that they feed on blood because I showed you how they came to my hand to feed. But we also know that adult mosquitoes, mosquito males and mosquito females, they actually also need to feed on sugar. So I'm going to flip my camera again and show you. So here's my mosquito cage, right? And this on top is actually a cotton ball, a big cotton ball that's soaked in sugar. And if we look underneath, we might be able to even see that there's a bunch of mosquitoes feeding on the sugar underneath. And the reason we do this is that mosquitoes, mosquito adults, they don't just feed on blood, they also feed on sugar. And in the wild, they'd be getting that sugar from flowers. And they may actually even be pollinators, like bees, moving from flower to flower and transferring pollen. So mosquitoes are a good example of an insect that that really needs our natural resources, you know, our space outdoors to be healthy in order for them to survive. So they need more than just blood. They also have to have sugar.
Yeah, so here at the Nature Center too, about keeping things healthy, I think one of the biggest things is to understand how everything in nature is connected, and things that we do in one place can actually have an impact downstream, I guess is a good way to describe it. So like here at the Nature Center, we don't like to use chemicals on the lawns, things like that, because we know that when it rains, everything washes into streams and into the ponds, and then they end up in the lakes. And that's where they can start to cause problems. Like it can either, it's going to kill the insects in the pond. If you're using fertilizers, well, the fertilizer that makes the grass grow nice and green is also going to make plants in the pond grow nice and green too, which can upset the balance as well. And when, like Lyric was talking about the mosquitoes, they play an important role for even things like bats and other animals here at the Nature Center. And if you don't have enough, or if you change the food source in one spot, it's going to have a chain reaction, and it's going to impact things along the food chain or in other parts where you might not even realize that they're connected.
That is wonderful. And there are so many questions in the chat that we haven't been able to get to today. And I just love that everyone's been so curious and has so many questions. And I hope that we even have more questions than we started with today. And one way that we can find out about how all of the living things around us are connected and how we fit into that is you can join the Wisconsin Science Festival Bioblitz. and get outdoors and try and find all of the insects and the animals and the plants that are around you right now. And in the chat, there's a way that you can find that more information on the website, wisconsinsciencefest.org/Bioblitz. And I just really want to thank Lyric and Melissa and Kara from the Aldo Leopold Nature Center and the University of Wisconsin-Madison for being with us today as nature explorers.
Thanks for having us. It was fun.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you out
Great.
there.
Thanks.
yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Get outside. Bye.